Hi, I'm Mike Kelly from Project Healing Waters Omaha, and tonight, since it's Leap Day, we're going to do a cricket and a grasshopper. And so for the cricket, this is something I've just kind of dreamed up in my head. Um, it's similar to some flies that are hopper patterns and stuff like that. For the hopper, I'll do Dave's hopper, Dave Whitlock pattern. Um, but for the cricket, um, I don't have a PowerPoint or anything like that, but it's going to use a couple of techniques that I've never really done before. And so hopefully it's going to turn out nice. So there we go. So for the cricket, um, for the hook, I'm using a 3X long size 8 nympher streamer hook. Black thread. For the tail, I'm going to use goose biots in black. Let's pull those out of the, those should work. Because a lot of pictures that and God knows I've seen enough crickets around the yard and getting in the house and stuff. They do have kind of a little, kind of a forky tail on the back. The ones we have here, at least the black crickets do. Um, I'm going to use a little bit of red hackle on the tail because I like red contrast, especially with black. I think that gives a nice look. For the body, I'm going to do a, it's going to be my first time at trying a double Gary LaFontaine's double magic. I'm going to do peacock curl, and I'm going to mix in some in my BT's dubbing kit here. Uh, some rust colored dubbing in with the peacock curl, and I think that'll make it a really nice look. I'm going to use super tacky wax because I want to make sure I get enough in there. For the wing, I'm going to do kind of a laid down wonder wing over the back using black saddle hackle. I'm just using, I don't know if I'm going to cause a thunderstorm, but I have a Ewing feather paper in here, but it's a Metz bag. But it's an old low quality black cape. But I took a couple of feathers off of it that are pretty thick and webby. For the wing, I'm going to use this one. And for this one, I'm going to do the use for the legs. I'm going to use hackle stems for the legs. The thorax, I'll use some black dubbing. So we've got some black dubbing. And then for the head and the collar, I'll use deer hair. I've got some black dyed. This is kind of spinning hair. This is, I think, belly hair that's dyed black. It's not a very good dye job because if I mess with it a lot, I get a lot of dye on my fingers. So back to the hook here. So I'm going to start the thread at about the 1/3 point back from the eye. And that's going to help me separate the back and where the legs are tied in, and the front part of the fly. So about a third of the way there. And back to the end of the shank. Here's the scissors. All right. So the first thing I'm going to tie in is a little bit of red saddle hackle. So get some more light on the fly here. Hopefully that's not too much. I'm going to take some red saddle huck. I'll use this side. It looks like it'll be easier to deal with. Um, and just hold them out 90 degrees from the stem so the tips pretty much align, and then just pull that rachis away. And I'm going to put a tail, maybe about a hook gap in length of red. Just right there on top of the hook shank, maybe even pointing down just a tad bit there. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some goose buyouts, and I'm actually going to try to do this with 3 of them. A lot of times I don't know if it's male or female, and actually what the dangly bits off the back of the cricket are called. But I'm going to separate these out so I have 3 separate ones. But it seems like a lot of times they'll have like a long pointy thing hanging off the back of there. So I'm going to tie this one right on top of the hook shank. So I laid it a little bit towards me and then let the thread torque put it on top of the hook. And I'm going to just kind of tie some of that back just to get it out of my way. So I've got that one centered pretty much on top of the hook. And then I'm going to split out 2 shorter ones. You go back to the end of the shank, and I'll put one in here. Maybe give it another wrap so I don't lose control of it. And then I'll put another one at an angle. And then I don't want to torque those too much, so I'm going to go back with some medium tension wraps, and then I'm going to really start bearing down back here where I'm not going to twist those at all. And just get those tied down nice. All right. So my back end looks like. It's got 2 buyouts. Let me take this other light and turn it underneath like this. Maybe you can see it better. I've got a longer one in the center and then 2 shorter ones off to the sides there. Now for the body, I'm going to take maybe 3 peacock herls. I just have some strung. Change my mind. I'm going to use some of this from an eye, because with strung peacock herl, a lot of times you're not going to get the real big pearls that have long fibers. Barbules, I guess they are, the little herls. I'm going to take 3 of these and cut them loose. Even up the butt ends. And then on the tips, normally the tips are a little bit fragile for about a 1/2 inch or so. So I'm just going to break those off so they don't break off accidentally. And then I'm just going to tie this down from the front, and that's giving me a little bit of bulk in that body. So I want the body to be a little bit plump. So there's some, go ahead. Okay. Zoom out a little bit. So now I'm going to do the double magic thing. So what I'm going to do is zoom out a little bit further here. Down. So I'm going to take about maybe 2.5 inches of that thread. And I'm saying that because of about the length of these furls. I'm going to take this super tacky dubbing wax and apply that to the thread for about as long as those furls are. And put the cap back on. Now I'm going to take, this is a dark rust. It's number 10 in BT's dubbing colors, but it's a beautiful rust color. It's got some red and some different colors in there. Red and brown and some different shades. It's also got a little bit of fine Antron in there. So I'm going to touch that onto the thread. Like that. All right, now I'm going to actually use a dubbing twister. Use this one. And right there at the end of that stuff, I'm going to go ahead and bring my thread back up and make a dubbing loop. Come around the back to close it up, actually make a turn around it here. And then bring that forward. Now I'm going to take those peacock curls and bring them down into that dubbing loop. And then give it a good spin. Thread out of the way. So I'm spinning a lot toward the dubbing tool, but it's not spinning at the top here very much. What I want is that dubbing to be mixed in with the peacock curl like that. So now, as I wrap that forward, I've got the strength of a dubbing loop, having the thread twisted in there. Another thing I'm going to do real quick is grab a plunger hackle pliers and just grab it at the tip there. I'll actually wrap it once here, make sure it doesn't slip out. And then I'll cut that dubbing whirl out of the way. It'll just be easier for me to wrap it. As I wrap my body forward, it's going to have some peacock curl mixed in with some of that dubbing. I just have enough. those were some kind of short hurls by the time I got them in there. Get those trapped in and let it loose. All right. So that's my body. Peacock herl with some nice red dubbing sticking through there. Now for the Wonder Wing. What I want to do is take this hackle and get most of this. I don't want a real thick stem. So I'm going to get where most of this fuzzy stuff is back here. And I'm actually just going to cut it at that point. Now I'm left with that. Now I want my wing to lay back over the back here. So if I kind of strip that back and judge it, I want it to be actually about like that right there. So that's about what I need for my wing. But you can see as you can see on my wing there, I've got, it's uneven. So I'm just going to take my bodkin and just pull two of those hackles away. So now I have an even end right there. So that's what I'm going to use for my wing. So I'm just going to strip all this back and tie it in ridiculously short, because that stem will give me the strength to kind of gain control of it. And then I can use the rest of the feather to pull that back where I have the wing at the right length. So I'm trying to keep it on top and flat. And I've got that right back to about the back of the body. So I'm going to go ahead and tie that off. Nice and tight. And clip off these tips. And then I'll cut it right here at the end of that wing. So I'm using the vise to steady this hand, and also holding my finger against the vise to steady this hand, so I don't end up really butchering it. So there's my flat Wonder Wing. A piece of peacock herl sticking out there. Maybe I better try to tie that down in case it does wants to come unwrapped. Just in case. All right. So now I got a nice looking wing on over the back of it. Next, I'll tie in the legs. So I've already stripped one of these. Just another black hackle, and just basically take all of these hackle barbs and just strip them off. And when you do that, I guess depending again on the dye job, if this was a natural black chicken, it would probably, the stem would probably stay mostly black. This does have some brown and a little bit of barring in it. But there's my two stems that I'm going to use for the legs. I want them to be a little bit thick. But I don't want them to be as thick as these are back here. So what I'm going to do is take there's a little bit of a curve on these toward where they stuck into the bird. So I'm just going to cut those off so they're a little flatter. And then one at a time, I'm going to take these quills and just tie a knot. It's like a regular overhand knot.
Could you zoom out a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Thank-
Whoops. Now, on this overhand knot, if I just pulled these straight, it would make that stem kind of straight. But if I grab that knot and pull against the knot, that helps me make that bend a little bit where I have more of a 90-degree angle. So that'll be one leg. I'll do the same to the other. And if I really wanted to geek out on this, I would tie my knot in a different direction to make sure that the bend of the feather matches. Whoops. But I'll just tie that, and again, I'll just pull against that knot so I get an angle for the knee of the back leg of the grasp of the cricket there. So I need to make a couple of cuts here, of course. I'm going to line those knees up and just kind of judge how long I want those legs to be. So I want it to be right about there. So with enough to tie it down, that should give me about the right proportions. So I'm going to try this one at a time, see if I can get them to behave. There's the one closest to me. Actually, let me try to get that more on the side, so maybe it can go up a little bit more. Medium wraps. There's one. And there's the other one. And those line up pretty good. So then I'll tie those butt ends down really tight. Okay, and then just to get rid of these, I'll go ahead and cut them. So that's my little hopper legs on the back of the cricket. Now for the head. This sounded like a good idea in my imagination. So we'll see how it actually works. I'm going to take a clump of this black deer hair. This is going to form the head and the collar. So I'm just trying to judge the amount here. So I want to take, hold it out here by the tips and just try to separate all that under fur and the shorter hairs. And I'm going to use a little comb to run through that, clean it all out. And that's what I'm left with. I'm going to take my hair stacker, stack the tips. Now, I want my collar to come back, for the collar. That's gonna show, basically as legs, um, kind of out the sides of the cricket. So I want it to be maybe to where the collar gets almost to the point of the hook. But then the way I want to form this, where my thumb is actually up at the eye, let's see, is where it's going to be tied down at. I'm going to need a little bit more to form the head, and I'll show you what I'm doing here. So I'm leaving about that much to be able to tie it down. So now I'm going to take my bundle of hair and I'm going to try to spin my bobbin clockwise as if you're looking down on it. And that made it jump toward my fingers. So I can grab that hair and I want to give it a couple of kind of loose wraps, but I want to work back toward those butts because I don't want it to flare a lot right now. Because in my mind, that's going to cause me trouble. But right there, I'm just about at those tips. So I'm going to go ahead and hold on to this hair and pull nice and tight. And then I'm going to work back toward the eye and do the same thing. Just pull it down nice and tight. And then I'll go back through there and tie those down. Okay. My leg's messed up. There we go. Now I'm going to take that black Touch-A-Tron dubbing, just so in case anything shows, it's not going to look too ugly. And I'm going to grab some of that and just take a few of these hairs. You can see my fingers are turning gray from that black deer hair. And I'm going to take this dubbing and just a little bit at a time make a dubbing noodle. I just need to kind of work on that little front area. So about 1.5 inches should be plenty. I just want to cover up those butt ends of the deer hair. And I'll come back to that point right there. So now what I think is a good idea is to take this. It'd be nice if I had like a straw or like a one of those stick Bic pens.
You got a bodkin?
The bigger end of that. And
What about your bodkin, Mike?
my bodkin has too small of a
Oh,
hole in it. What I'm trying to do is just form a little bit of a round head here. Get all those captured. And then take a couple of loose wraps, pull it down. And then finish right on that little throat area. And then I just thought of one other idea. I think I want to balance that out with a little bit more red. We call this a redneck cricket. And it takes some red thread here. And put a red neck on it. Now a red tail, a red neck, and then that rusty dubbing through the double magic body there. And I think I want to, well, I want to cut these on the bottom. So there it is. There's Mike's Flicted Cricket.
Really cool, Mike. Although this did give me an idea. You know, where you did your legs, you know, the descender portion of the leg.
Right.
I wonder if a person could tie a knot real close to where the feather is, and then use a rotary cutter to cut a V. So then those legs still have part of the rachis on it, and then those
Right.
legs move in the water. I don't know. Just thinking
Right.
out loud, it gave me an idea. It's like really
Right.
cool. Love it.
So that's something to play with nymphs and stuff like that, is to make a dubbing loop with some peacock herl and just do that touch dubbing. You don't want to really want to twist it on, because you want those little dubbing fibers to kind of stick out a little bit. So
Mike, that is beautiful. Good job.
that was a whole lot of dreaming, so I'm glad it turned out good. I'm gonna put some glue around this because I don't want to forget to do that. Just around that red band, because that'll break. And Al, I'm glad you approved of my double magic technique there. I had a little trouble with the way it was spinning. But I think that turned out good. Next one I really like is Dave's Hopper. I'm not going to go through all the history on it. I did this a couple of years ago. But it started off as a Michigan hopper. While I get all my stuff out of the way here. Started off as a Michigan hopper. And then I think it was Art Winnie created it, and Joe Brooks really liked the fly. He put it in his book, and it was kind of started to be known as Joe's Hopper. Started to change a few of the things on it, a few of the materials on it. Here's a picture if you want to. That's what the Joe's Hopper looked like. And it was eventually Joe Brooks's friend Dave Whitlock liked it, but he thought it tended to twist the leader, and he wasn't really that satisfied with its flotation. So then he created an, I don't know if you can see that very good, but that's more of the Dave's Hopper. So it's got the deer hair, clipped deer hair, added some legs in, and a few different materials. So what I'm going to use for the Dave's Hopper, switch to the webcam. For the hook, I'll use the same hook. I'm going to use a, let's see, I'm kind of afraid to use a Vivus with deer hair, because a lot of times that can cut. And I know if I'm doing it on camera, it's going to cut the deer hair. I'll just use that same black thread. It's a 140 denier black ultra thread. I'll do the same for the tail with the red hackle fibers. I always do that on this pattern. The body will be this poly yarn, yellow poly yarn. And it'll be ribbed with a saddle hackle. Usually it's a brown, but I think I'm going to use this grizzly. The wing is just one slip of turkey quill. You don't have to have matched wings on this fly. It's kind of looks better to me if it's just bent over, and after a fish or two, the wing's going to be pretty much shredded anyway. And then the legs, similar to the to what we did with the cricket, but a little bit different. And I think, Bill, you'll like this. And then for the collar and the head will be just spun deer hair, and I'm going to use this yellow stuff. So switch back to the hook. I need a hook. I'm going to do the same thing. I want about the same proportion, about a third of the way back from the eye. And then I'll lay down a thread base. I'll do the same thing with the red saddle hackle. I'll take about 9 or 12 of those hackle barbs. And so when I pulled the rachis away, those got out of alignment this time for some reason. So what you can do is, they're not too bad, but you can take these butts and kind of stack them with your thumb like that. Move that light a little bit. Stack them with your thumb, and that'll help align the tips. So again, I'll put a red tail on it, about maybe a hook gap. And then I'll wrap that forward. To that front point. Now I'm going to take my poly yarn and straighten this out some. And I'm going to cut the ugly end a little bit there, and so it's kind of flat. And tie that down. And then I'll just kind of do spaced wraps back here, the back, but then I want to do a few pretty good wraps right there at the butt, at the back end. So for the body on this, I want to make a little bit of an extended body. So what I'm going to do is twist this poly yarn, and you want to twist it clockwise unless you're in Australia, and then you want to twist it counterclockwise. Just give it a good twist, and then you can use your bodkin or just your fingers and just grab it back about where you want it to extend. And then I didn't have it twisted enough. Let me give it a little bit more. What I'm doing is pulling it back, and then when you let go, it should furl like that and give you a little bit of an extended body. So now I'm going to take a wrap just to hold that in place for now so I can let go of it. Make sure I roll that up on top. Take a couple good wraps there, and then a couple on the hook shank, and then sorry about that, then come back over. And then back on the hook shank, and I'll move that forward to the front. So now I can take that poly yarn. Oh, skipped a step. I want to tie in the hackle I'm going to use for a rib. So I'm just going to take this long saddle hackle and this is going to look ridiculous at first, but I have a plan. Let me go back to the back. Just going to reverse those wraps that I had before. Back to the back here. And this is what I'm going to use for a rib. Now I'm going to take that poly yarn and wrap it forward. Got a little bit around the hook there, but I'll just cut that out of the way. Overlap a little bit because I want a little bit of a thickness to the body there. And now that I'm at the front, take about 3 good wraps over the top. A couple wraps on the hook shank, back over the top, just to trap that in good. And then I'll cut that loose. And now I'm going to take that hackle stem and palmer it through that yellow body. And like I said, this is going to look ridiculous, but I have a plan. Get up to the thread and tie it off. Save that for another fly. Now, just going to move my thread up here out of the way. And I'm going to take all of that hackle and clip it short. So what I end up with is a nice spiky hackle rib. There's my extended body, the little bit of red. And then that was that poly yarn that I had around the hook. Ugliness. Oh, hackle fibers there. All right, now for my legs, instead of stripping the fibers off, I already have one prepared that I did last night. I'm leaving it clipped short like that. So I'll do the same on this one, but over the trash bin. But basically what I'm doing is stretching everything out. Zoom out here some. Stroke it out to where it's about 90 degrees from the stem ish. And then just go through and clip those off with scissors where they're about maybe up to about 1/8 of an inch in length. both sides. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it really helps to spread those out. If they start to lay back, your scissors will just kind of glance right off of them. So anyway, I've got 2 of these hackle rakuses now with all the little stubby, and grizzly looks really nice for this. So I'm going to do the same basic thing I did for the legs. I'm going to cut back a little ways to where the fuzzy stuff is off the base here. And then I'm just going to take them one at a time and tie a knot. And make sure when you tie the knot, you can go ahead and leave a little bit on here that you know is longer than what you want. Because that way you can always cut it to the correct size. But if it's too short of that length, then gonna mess you up. So same thing here where I want that to be at an angle, so I pull those at an angle. That's a pretty good one. And go do the same to the other. Maybe put a twist, there we go, put a twist into it, wrap better. Same thing. Pull it at angles that way. Okay. There's my other leg. I'm going to go ahead and cut that a little bit more in case I need it. I don't think I will. All right. So the leg on my side is shorter. Try to adjust it a little bit. Might work out good. Twisted. Then the other side. Line up the knees. Pretty good. Move forward a little bit and then cut those out. Then, boy, poly yarn sure doesn't like a Velcro. I got a mess. All right, hold that out of the way. Next thing that will go over it is the wing. So I'm going to take a portion of the wing a little bit more than the gap of the hook. The reason I'm doing that instead of saying a 1/2 inch or a 1/4 inch is it depends on the hook size that you're dealing with. So I'm going to actually push into it and take a little bit more than a hook gap in length and just mark that feather. And then cut it away from the rachis. Now I'm left with that. I just want to make sure those are married nice so they don't split too early. Now, here toward where it was connected to the rachis, it's pretty thick. And if you were to tie that down tight with thread wraps, that'll just take those fibers and just basically what's the word I'm looking for? it'll flare them out is the word I'm looking for. I'm gonna take that wing longer than what I want and let that hang out over the back. And then I'd like to make this kind of a tent wing, so I'm gonna fold it over. Nice and flat. And I want to fold it over that body. Couple of loose wraps that are toward the back, fairly loose wraps. And then tighten down as I come forward. All right. I want to get those legs out. I wonder if I actually should have tied that wing in before the legs. I'll have to look at a grasshopper sometime. Where are we with time? I wonder, maybe I'll just go ahead and I'll redo that. Because if you just say that's good enough and you put it in your fly box anyway, you're going to look for the better looking ones first and you're not going to fish it. So take those legs and set them aside. Grab my wing, and that should go around that body a lot better. Nice soft wrap at the back. Couple of soft wraps to gather that in kind of a tent shape, but then as I go forward, I'll tighten it down. Then cut that wing. And I don't think I damaged my legs too bad. Try the one closest to me. Good. And the far side. Looks good. Fold up those butts and clip them off. All right. Now for the fun part. I'm going to take some more deer hair. And I'm going to try to do this in two parts. I'm going to take kind of hold that up. I mean, that's about what I want for the collar. It's kind of hard to describe the amount of hair. But again, I'm going to grab it out here by the tips and get rid of all the shorter hairs and the under fur. Stack it again. And I want to pull it out with the tips facing the direction I want to tie it in. So I don't have to mess with it too much. And I want my collar to be out to the tip of the, but maybe a little bit shorter. So what I'm going to do here is set that hair about to where I want it, maybe a little bit longer, because when it flares up, it's going to look differently. Take a couple loose wraps around it and then pull straight down, pinching that on top. Now, as I go forward, I'm going to go through a few of those hairs at a time. And you see, as I go through them, you'd think it would kind of make them stick out toward the front, but they're actually sticking up straighter. And that's because you're flaring them. And I actually cut some of them. I'm pulling so hard. Now I'm going to wrap a little bit in front of that. And just to make it easier to deal with the collar when I go back, I'm going to take these butt ends here. Just cut them just a little bit shorter, so I can tell where my collar is. And that'll make it easier to trim when I get done. So my collar is here on the side and on this side. So I didn't roll too far forward. And it helps to go through those butts like that to keep you from going too far forward. What I mean is, as I wrap through those butts, I was holding this real tight. And as you do that, that keeps all of this hair from wanting to roll forward around the other side of the hook. So now I'm going to take another pretty good sized clump, a little bit bigger than what I did first time. And again, I'm going to grab those tips, get rid of all the junk. And then I'm not going to stack this time. I'm actually going to cut these butt ends fairly even. And then I'm going to do the same to the other side. I'm going to actually cut those tips off. So what I'm left with is a little under an inch of just the butts of the hair. I'm going to take this clump here, take a couple of wraps, and then with my third wrap, I'm going to go like really tight and let that spin around. And then I'm just going to go through those hairs and work my way toward the front. And I think in this case, I'm going to use a half hitch tool. Do a half hitch. If that got on there or not. Nope, it didn't. I will whip finish. It really helps if you have a bigger half hitch tool for that bigger eye of the hook on there. I'm going to wrap over those hairs a little bit just to get a good knot in there. Pull it nice and tight. And then I'm just going to make a little V in my scissors and push against the thread because I don't want to cut too much of that hair. Make my head look different than I wanted to. So I'm going to stand that out. And then I'm going to, I don't know if you can see it. I have a little basket here. I'm just actually going to spin that around to where it's underneath my fly. So that way I can catch most of the stuff that comes off of there. I'm going to start along the bottom just to kind of give it a good, make sure it's not crowding the hook eye, and make it pretty flat along the bottom. I do have some black thread showing there that I wish I didn't have. But I think if I did that color different, that that black thread wouldn't have shown. So that makes the bottom nice. Again, I just want to make sure I don't have anything in the front of that hook eye. So I'm going to go flat across the front here. And then it'll help if I kind of turn it towards me here. I'm going to take side cut on both sides. Take one across the front. You can do this with a razor blade. I don't have one here. I'll just do it with the scissors. You can also use the scissors. Just use that. A grasshopper has kind of a blocky head. It's
Mike,
almost
are you, are those serrated scissors?
These are not. I'm lucky this is a sharper pair. Serrated scissors would be perfect for this. It, like you can see, even with these, it sometimes it'll push the hairs away from you before it's actually cutting them. If you can get a good pair of serrated scissors, those are really, really nice. They're just fine serrations, and they really, like with a lot of different slick materials, it'll hold it in place instead of pushing it away. And I don't want to spend too much time doctoring this up, but basically make it kind of a blocky head there. And that's pretty good. And you can press against the collar here and be able to get those back ones. They'll snap forward to your scissors and let you cut them. I don't know if you notice that. You push against the collar, then those shorter ones will stand up. And then if you have a long ones, sometimes you can just break it off too. So here's a Dave's hopper. Leg in place here.
Cool. Love it, Mike. Thank you.
Very nice fly, Mike. Thank you.
Nice.